So yeah, okay, we'll start without Lauren. She'll be here in a few minutes, but like I said, I think she hasn't watched Severance, and Severance just finished episode 7 of season 2, and I think it's going to some really interesting places. And I thought we ought to talk about it because it's wild, and I think this is a show that kind of like lost benefits from being talked about weekly because things are changing quickly per episode, right? Um, And so this last episode felt tonally different than any episode they've done, and part of it was because their cinematographer, their regular cinematographer was the director.
I was
Uh,
looking up her name.
yeah,
Exactly. Keep going.
and I think it's the first thing she's directed.
It is.
And it
And she
has
killed it.
oh
Oh,
yeah, it feels so different because it's so for a show that's already very visual. This episode in particular is very visual and impressive in that way.
atmospheric,
Hmm.
so atmospheric. And I remember at one point just looking, even I think she's in the office where she's being, and I think that's Sandra Bernhardt. I didn't actually look it up,
Yes.
but okay,
Yeah.
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 So Sandra Bernhardt is like which is such a different role for
Yeah.
her.
I
So I
didn't even
love
know she was
that.
in this. Like I saw her and I was like, holy crap. Like I
Yeah.
didn't, yeah.
But the use of color, I think, in that episode, and there was a crazy transition at one point where it's like kind of going it's like it is it's cinema. No, I'm sorry. That
Hmm.
episode was cinema. So to have a cinematographer like already know how to set up really great shots, but then actually have full control of the visual, I'm like, I hope you deserve all the accolades you get in your future because
Yeah.
maybe I overhyped it, but I personally thought that was me and Sony were talking about it, and it was her favorite episode. And for me, it was like it's between that one and of course the one in when they went on that outdoor
The
excursion. Like
Ortbo.
between those two. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was so good. All right.
I completely agree because this one, number one focuses on a character that while we've cared about in the past, we haven't really seen anything from in the past, right? Like to see, excuse me, to see what was her name? I know Miss Casey is what they call her on the inside.
Gemma.
Gemma, that's right. And one of the things that's really fascinating about this episode is it really kind of raises a handful of questions. Um, One being, how many innies can one person have? Right? They keep taking her and putting her into new situations and different situations over and over and over again. And it seems like she is not the same person in each one.
Right.
So, like, she is slowly being fractured into all these little pieces, and we don't know what impact it's really having. But it sounds like at some point she's been promised that she would be able to return to her husband, who believes she's dead. And at one point, they even use that against her or try to use that against her, and they tell her that, oh, he's been remarried now and has a daughter, right? Because time doesn't matter in there anymore. Like the more times you go into places and you start to lose track of time and stuff. So it was also a trip to see her as a character that that they brought in from the outside, who is herself in the building and then gets transferred around from place to place.
Yeah.
Um, so it's wild in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think it was great acting too. Like you really kind of fleshed out the Gemma character. She definitely has her own. I mean, one of the best moments obviously is like when that, creepy doctor is talking to her and he turns around and then she just
She
like
just
decks
hits
him
him with
with
the
a
chair.
chair. That was
Oof.
like so good. And Mr. Milicic, even though I see him as a very intriguing character who's like kind of caught, he's a cog in the machine. I gotta say, the way he's just like, go back, like after she's so close to
Cold,
escaping,
cold. Yeah.
I was like, man, damn you, Mr. Milicic. She was so close. Um, the love story, I think, between her and Mark was very powerful, very relatable, all of the things. Me and you said the exact same thing about Mark. And I actually said to Saloni, I said, hey, Mark was kind of a D-bag, and she's
Hmm.
like, no, she was like, that's just normal marriage. I'm like, nah, dude, he was taking her for granted, and then and literally at last night, of course, that's how it had to go down. But I just I love episodes where, like you said, we never know much about that character. And then this episode was basically her episode.
Hmm.
And and then and Mark, who's usually the main character, is a side character. Like he's a main side character, but he's still a side character.
Yeah.
And I just think that Declan Lockman, if I'm saying her name correctly, I think this is also a star turn for her. I've seen her in a lot of things, like particularly Agents of Shield, and then I know she was also in Altered Carbon. But I think this was, I think, really a chance to showcase her acting ability, because even her innie and her outies, and even the way Miss Casey carries herself, she's kind of
Hmm.
like slouched and very meek. Whereas, who she is, Gemma, is like, she's like Helly, but smarter. Like
Yeah.
she's gonna like wait until like you're not looking before she revolts,
But
you know?
she also like on the outside she has like a non-arrogant confidence. Like she's a very strong, smart,
Yeah.
woman, and she goes through some stuff on the outside, like the scene where she's sitting in the shower, like that was rough. Like I mean, she goes through a lot, and I think, um, I just think it was really great to see them put her through the paces and see who she really is. But at the same time, like you start to get more and more and more of an idea just how bad
Yeah.
uh, Lumen is, and I pointed it out too when in our group chat. I know the show is getting good because as I'm watching it, I'll notice something. I'll have to pause and go back to verify, and then come back to where I was because what I noticed there's a scene where she's sitting with the doctor, and he goes through and he's like, "Oh, which rooms did you go into today?" And he lists off 6 rooms. And then later on, he's talking to her and he lists off a completely different room. So they're adding rooms, like they are adding more and more and more. There's piling on. And so yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where she ends up, and what they do with Mark now, because he's going to start to get those memories back on the inside. So his situation is super complicated because you've got the Helly situation, which for all intents and purposes, he's not wrong to do. On the inside, he has no idea that he's married. He has no idea that there's somebody else, anything like that. So Helly is like his person on the inside. Um, but now he's going to have really mixed emotions about that when he starts to remember the feelings that he has for somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is a good place to park. It was super short. But yeah, I'm gonna let you do your host thing, and I'll figure out my situation, whether, shall I stay or shall I go? That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So Lauren, you made it. We just talked about Severance real quick because I don't think you've been watching Severance, right?
No, but it's on my list, so don't
Okay.
tell me too much.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully you didn't hear too well. I don't think
I
without
was
context, I
You
don't think this
wouldn't
will give
know
anything away.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
no idea,
Um,
but everyone's telling me to watch it, so it might be one of those shows like Penguin. I think I'm on board.
yeah, it's amazing. I would say at this point you might do well to just wait a couple weeks,
Okay,
because the finale will be out and then you can just bust through both seasons super fast. Um, they're they
sounds good.
they're about an hour each. I don't remember if the first season had like the kind of after credits special kind of like 5 minutes about the episode. But the
Not sure
second
either.
season, yeah, the second season definitely does. So those are worth watching for sure. Lots of cool information there and get to see the people behind the show. Um, but yeah, it is definitely a thinking show. I mean, the downside to binging the 2 seasons all at once is just like watching Lost too fast. You don't have time to like create theories in your head. You just kind of keep going. Um, but since you're so close to the end, it would almost suck to burn through, every episode and then all of a sudden have to wait for like the last 2 episodes. It might drive you crazy. Um, but definitely at least, let's see, this was episode 7. There's 10 episodes, I
Three
think.
more.
Yeah, so there's 3 more episodes. They drop on Thursdays.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thursday night.
So, but yeah, definitely get into it. It's amazing. Really is amazing. Great acting. A lot of people that I haven't seen before doing amazing things.
Absolutely. Even the music. And
Hmm.
just, yeah. What I'll say is, I came late to the game, so season one I watched right before season two returned. And some people have said they felt like season one was kind of slow toward till until the end. So that's a warning.
Yeah, I got that.
But I will say though that season two has been an improvement. And I remember at first the first episode of season two even was like kind of like because season one ends on some it's pretty major, and then
Mm,
like season two happens and you're like, oh, okay. But then no, it's okay. Like even though it kind of like calms down again in the beginning of season two, oh, it ramps up. Like so it's
real fast.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely give it a watch.
Okay, for
Um,
sure.
all right. Since Andrew is still here and may last or may not really quick, I'll talk about the movie behind me, Elevation. Um, it's on Netflix right now. I think it's Netflix. It is Anthony Mackie, Marina Baccarin, and Maddie Hassan, I think, is the other main character. Um, I'll just start by saying, we talked a couple weeks ago about how Anthony Mackie doesn't have a lot of leading roles out there. This one didn't do him any favors. It's really unfortunate because it sets him back to that like
oh,
bland, like personalityless character that I don't think serves him well. Um, this show this it's funny because Pete pointed out this is one of the few movies that Andy and I agree on
it's
in
not good.
chat. Yeah, that it's not a great movie. Like it really feels like it was a TV show pilot
Mm.
that they extended into a movie because they didn't know what to do with it. It
I
ends
also heard
on
it was bad. Someone
yeah,
told me like a week or two ago in the office, asked me if I saw Elevation. I was like, no, and they're like, just don't.
yeah, like it ends in a spot where they definitely set up a second movie, and I can't imagine it getting a second movie.
Mm.
But if it had been a series, it would have been a fine pilot, like setting up like more stuff. So the gist of this story, and it just runs right into it, is that was it 3 years before the movie starts? All these things start coming out of the ground. These creatures start coming out of the ground, and for whatever reason, number one, they just destroy humans and only humans. They don't attack other animals. They don't attack anything else. And they can only go as high as 8,000 feet. So if you get to 8,001 feet, no matter where you are, you're safe. And they literally have scenes where people get chased to the line, cross the line, and the thing stops at 8,000 feet. Is like it's such a weird, like arbitrary thing, and like it's so that's the whole basis of the movie, and they've all but given up. The people that made it to 8,000 feet or higher, in this case, they're in Colorado, right? Because there's actually not a lot of higher elevation places in the United States. Like the whole middle of the country would just be screwed, right? Um, and so Anthony Mackie's up there. He's got a son who they don't really explain it, but has a hard time breathing, but some for some reason only at night. Yeah, I don't know why it's only at night. And he has these air filters that this device that he has and uses. And so our story kicks off because his last filter basically runs out. And so the only way to find more is to try and go to a hospital. And of course, all the hospitals are below 8,000 feet. So now we're into this adventure. Marina Baccarin's character is someone who, as the story goes on, we find out was a scientist that in the early stages of these things coming out was kind of studying, ways to stop them, and she could never figure it out. And then um, she got trapped above 8,000 feet, and then she didn't have all the things she needed um, to continue her research. So she was trying, like you see her early in the movie with a rifle, and she's got basically a scale that fell off of one of these creatures, and she's shooting it. And no matter what she does with her bullet, no matter what she does, she can't pierce the armor, and that's her only goal is to be able to pierce the armor because no one's been able to kill these things, not the military, not anybody. And so at this point, it just becomes, an adventure where they're trying to get from point A to point B to get to these filters and then get back. Well, since I've already told you this movie is not great, I'll probably just go ahead and spoil it. You can watch it if you want to,
Nope.
but there's not really any need to. Um, she so they go and they have to go through this tunnel, and of course, this tunnel is above 8,000 feet where it starts. It exits at 8,000 feet, and he's taking these two women with him. He's taking Marina Baccarin and this frenemy person of theirs, played by Mari Hassan, whose character I can't remember her name. Um, but she kind of has a thing for Anthony Mackie because his wife died during everything. So they go into this tunnel and then they're like, "Are you sure it never dips down?" He's like, "Well, it dips down below 8,000 feet once because he used to work in this tunnel, of course, conveniently." And they're like, "Bro, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, it'll be fine. It's only like 1,000 feet." And they're like, "What? 1,000 feet?" They're like, "Okay." They're like, "Number one, these things come from underground. So there's, if we fall below, they could sense what he's like, it'll be fine." So they get into the tunnel. Turns out the spot that they need to get through is blocked, but they're already far enough along. He's like, "Screw it, we'll drop down one level." And they're like, "No." But of course they do. And the other girl dies. The blonde girl that's with him gets eaten by one of the monsters. Um,
Great stuff, buddy.
and well, it doesn't even get eaten. She just gets taken by one of the monsters.
Okay.
But I mean, it basically it like pierces her through the chest. She's pretty dead, even though we don't see it eat her. It just pulls her off.
Plenty of
And
review.
so they get out. They get out. They're above 8,000 feet, so they take their deep breaths or whatever. And then they find a car that they can drive down to the hospital. They get to the hospital. There's stuff that Marina Baccarin's character needs to do more research. Like she needs stuff to bring back to study more. So while he's looking for these filters, she starts working on bullets again while she's there. And of course, she has this miraculous
Breakthrough.
revelation. Yeah. But she hasn't figured it out yet. So she just tells him to go save your kid. She's like, if I get out, I get out. If I don't, it doesn't matter. Like, she's like, if I can't figure it out now, we're screwed anyways. Because everything she needs is there. And so he gets back in the car, starts driving to the top. He gets to, I don't know, 7,985 feet, right? Like he's like right by the line. And he ends up getting trapped by these monsters. He's surrounded by like three of them. And then she jumps out of the woods with her rifle, shoots one, and the thing just explodes. Like explodes. And then she kills the other two. And he's like, "Oh my God, you figured it out." They start walking through where they blew up, and they're robotic. Which, if you're watching the movie, like it
It's hinted
seems.
at.
I mean, it's not really hinted at, but
Oh.
it like just felt like an obvious reveal. Like, why would the number one? Why would these things all know exactly what 8,000 feet is? Why, all these
Uh,
things that like kind of add up. So I wasn't really shocked by it. And then they're like, "Well, where did they come from?" And then they're like, "Oh, probably aliens." And then the last thing you see is them looking towards the sky, and you see these two lights, or these two like they almost look like meteorites or something, or comets or something, but they're coming super slow and they're big through the sky. So they're going to land, and then credits roll. So like there's a bigger force coming. Now, how these things got underground and came back out, we don't have to worry about that. They're just there. They ate everybody, you know, and so like yeah, if it
Oh
had been a
man.
pilot, right? Like it had been a pilot for a show setting up a bigger alien invasion and the stuff, or maybe just a better done movie that set it up, so it was setting up like a small series or something. It could have been a Netflix series. I mean, it doesn't feel like the budget was super high. You don't see the monsters a lot, so they probably didn't spend a lot of money on those. And you can tell by their outfits, they're not, in a huge sci-fi like, film. So, I mean, it worked well enough in that regard. It just wasn't very good.
So do
Um,
you still think Sam Wilson in you know, uh New World, Brave New World is like the best leading job that he's done so far then?
in film, yes. I'll still always go back to Twisted Metal on Peacock. I definitely 100% recommend that. It is a different side. If you ever see Anthony Mackie in an interview or going to an interview, he is a high energy dude. Like he really, really is. So to see these parts from him almost feels weird because in Twisted Metal, he's fun, man. Like he is a fun character. He's having a good time. He's really interesting. He's complex still. He's not just super, ridiculous for no reason. Like he's got a past and he's working through all this stuff and the character's interesting. So he can do fun and still be a good actor, I think. So I'm not sure why he keeps picking these dramatic roles that don't really stretch him. Like that's the thing too. Like I in Captain America, I do feel like he pushed himself a little further with the character and definitely did better acting than he's done in the past as far as that goes. But these characters are all kind of the same. Like he wasn't a lot different than Cap in this, and so I don't know what his attraction is to this stuff. I don't know if he thinks maybe he's trying to chase awards or something. I mean, this isn't the role that's going to do it, but a lot of people feel like dramatic roles are the only way you're ever going to win awards.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's funny because Sebastian Stan, his partner in crime in real life, I feel like is killing it. I mean, the guy is up for an Oscar for The Apprentice, you know? And I remember the first
yeah,
time I saw Sebastian Stan in something, it was that I, Tonya film, and he actually was
mm,
like Jeff Galooly. So, I mean, I love to see the Marvel actors do their thing. The last thing I'll say before I make my kind of exit is that I did like him in Striking Vipers, and that was that episode of Black Mirror
Black
where
Mirror. Yeah,
and Yahya Abdul Mateen, because the character he played was kind of a mild-mannered, suburban, like the furthest thing from like an action star. He was just like a video game guy who got caught up in a weird bromance. So I'll just leave that at that. But I want to see the guy win. When I saw
yeah.
the interstitial, I was like, okay, all right. But then you said no, and then I laughed. And I love that again. Pete did call out that we got to buy lottery tickets or whatever. The seven planets have converged, which happened because you and Andy agreed on a movie being bad. So
Yeah, and I think I've been looking it up real quick. I'm trying to see what it was on. Yeah, so on Rotten Tomatoes, weirdly, it's like an 81% from the audience, which surprises me. 56% from the critics, which, well, I rarely do, but in this case, I definitely kind of side with the critics on this one. It was only okay. Like it was pretty. Like the settings were pretty. Like it's shot in Colorado. Like you've got these mountainous locations and all this stuff. It just wasn't impressive. And like I said, it's like they took an hour-long show and turned it into an hour and a half movie, and just filled it with stuff that didn't matter.
well,
Um,
I'll never say Marina Baccarin doesn't light up the screen in some way, shape, or form. I'm a fan. Just saying for the record.
it's a different character for her too, because she's actually really kind of grumpy and moody in this. Like she usually brings like some kind of lightheartedness or fun to her characters. And there's zero of that here. Like she's definitely like,
Hardened.
yeah, for sure. Um, and like part of it, you at one point you almost feel like she's just going to screw everybody over for some reason, or like maybe she's even in on it. Like there's something weird about her character, and that never develops in that way. So, um, it just yeah, it really could have been better. And I don't know where you go now. They figured out how to beat these things, and they show that they spread the word right at the end. So when the credits start rolling, they do that kind of corny thing where you see the map of the US and green starts to spread out as they start to clear out, these things. So apparently whatever she figured out was super reproducible, right? And so they're basically eradicating these things before the aliens come down. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but I haven't seen the watch numbers for it. If the watch numbers are high, it could very well get a sequel. Um, but I don't expect it to, just because I don't think it was good enough. But he was a producer on it, I think. So, if his own money's in there, he might push it. I don't know. So we'll see.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to telepathically uh, find out what Lauren's going to talk about. And I see three things. And oh my God, it's like something about the gypsy, maybe, or something about like a Best Picture nominee. I think it's called I'm Still Here, and then maybe Bridget Jones. I'm not sure. But anyway, I could be totally wrong, but that was just worth a try. So I hope that, y'all have a great rest of the show. I know the Oscars are tomorrow, so we'll see if y'all make any predictions before the show. So with that, deuces for now. See you next time.
All right, man. All right. And then there were two. All right. So you came back from Broadway tonight. Might as well talk about that since it's fresh in your
I
head. I know
did. Oh, it's the
Gypsy.
worst part when I can't even
Yeah.
show it over my face.
Yeah.
No, no, it won't. Okay, yeah,
This
there we go.
Gypsy is, I mean, this is a revival, right? Like
It
Gypsy's
is
been
a
around for a long
revival.
time.
Oh yeah, you know about it. It's a
Yeah.
classic. I saw it over 20 years ago with my mom and my grandma back in the day with Bernadette Peters, who
Hmm.
played Rose. Right now, Audra McDonald is playing Rose.
Oh, I love Audra McDonald.
Yep, saw her this evening. Went and won through the Broadway Rush for a little over $50 per seat. Saw with
It's
a
not
friend
bad.
in my neighborhood. It was fantastic. It's based on a memoir written about the famous striptease professional burlesque star named Gypsy Rose Lee, who performed in the early 1900s. And the memoir came out in the mid late 50s. And then after that, there was a play written about her, and Stephen Sondheim was responsible for the lyrics of the show. So, in- incredible performance, just as I had to piece things together throughout the show to recall what happened because it had been 20 plus years. But it centers around the mother, Rose, who is in this show being played by Audra McDonald, and she is the ultimate stage mom, overly just aggressive and trying to get her two daughters, Louise, the oldest, and then June, the youngest, to be stars. And specifically in the beginning, the first act, the focus is on June, who is this young, curly-haired, blonde girl who has an act centered around her, and she's the talented one who sings, dances, and then Louise, the older sister, is pretty much in the background. They have her in a cow costume behind her at one point in one of the scenes where they have different acts that Rose curates for her daughter, and then she hires male dancers to perform alongside her dear June. And then at one point, after being shipped across the country and performing in a circuit across different theaters and stuff. It originates in Seattle, and they go to LA, and they go to many different cities. June's finally like, all right, I'm not getting where do I need to be. I'm not on the same page as my mom, so she flees with one of the guys who's in the group, who's almost like a backup dancer, and apparently they elope and peace out, mom. And at that point, the mother, Rose, is like, "Ah, well, this is what I live for. I'm going to make my oldest daughter, Louise, the not as talented one, the center of my attention now. We're going to make her a star." And while this is going on, there's this man, Herbie, who falls in love with her, and she's already been married 3 times. And this man, Herbie, volunteers to be their agent, and he says he's had a background as like a talent manager, and he all he wants to do is please Rose and to marry Rose, and she wants nothing to do with, I don't want to say nothing to do with him, but she's taking full advantage of this guy, and she's like, yeah, we'll get married, but continue getting us into theaters and essentially using this poor guy who is completely just infatuated with Rose, and all he wants to do is make her his wife. Um, yeah, but overall the music's fantastic. They have so many classic songs. The girl that I went with wasn't hadn't seen the show before, but as the show was going on, she's like, "Oh, I know that song. Everyone knows, you know, let me entertain you." And then, everything's coming up roses. I mean, these are
Yeah.
classic
Yep.
songs that people know, whether you've seen the show or not. You've heard these songs. And then second act, you get to Louise, Herbie, and Rose, and they finally found a theater, and it's not your conventional theater, it's a burlesque theater. And at that point, Louise is this very shy, as I mean, they reference not as talented as her sister, younger sister who fled, and she mingles with some of the burlesque dancers. And I remember this from the first show. There was one that played a trumpet. There was another one who had this outrageous outfit where her her breast and her front part and her back part lit up. There was like some sort of switch that they turned on, which is funny. So that was like her act, and they're like, you got to find an act, something that makes you stick out. And at that point, all of the girls in this new act that they brought on for Louise are dropping like flies. And at this point, Rose is like, "Oh, this is so unclassy, but like we need money, so yeah, Louise, you're gonna strip too, you know." And Louise is just so bashful, and we don't know how this is gonna work. We're gonna make you very classy, give you gloves, like full length gloves, and put you in a gown and have some fur draped around you, and you see her first striptease and her come to the stage, and she's so embarrassed. They're like, drop a shoulder, and she like drops a shoulder, shows her shoulder, and then they show her years later, and she's an absolute star, and she's known for her like witty stripteases where she starts in like a very elegant outfit, very classy, and then slowly but surely tricks people and takes pieces off and such. And she gets to be such a big star in such a new, innovative way that her mother would have never expected. And she makes it big, Louise. She is now Gypsy Rose Lee. And the mother becomes infuriated because as Louise gets, more notoriety and fame and is on the road, Rose sort of blends in more to the background and she starts to feel, why does everyone start to leave, including her first three husbands, and Herbie eventually leaves, and June, the younger daughter, leaves, and she feels that Louise is getting more distant. And like the ending, one of the ending songs is like, when's it going to be about me, basically? When am I going to have my turn?
Hmm. What's the name of that song?
Of when's it going to be my turn?
Yeah.
It's a famous one. It is called
Yeah.
Rose's Turn.
Oh, okay.
You've definitely heard it.
Yeah.
Like she's just infuriated, like I could have been better than both of my daughters and everyone out there. And it's just one of those, you know how they say oftentimes that like the mom that's like pushing her kids hard, that's the woman that's inside who's like was missing as a child. And that's the perfect analogy with this show. This is a woman who feel like she didn't amount to anything, and she's putting all of this energy, effort into her kids and pushing them so hard to essentially make them be what she never was.
Hmm.
So, and both of her daughters, like in real life, June ended up being an actress and definitely not as popular as Gypsy Rose Lee, but Gypsy Rose Lee, was able to get to fame in a very different manner. But nonetheless, you can find them both on Wikipedia and learn about their careers and such. And yeah, the play centers on Rose. It was great 20 plus years ago, and it was great this evening. And this is not a limited run. I'm hoping that it's on for at least another couple of months. There is, as far as I'm concerned, no plans. I love this background. Oh, there we go. No, there's no plans for this to be leaving anytime soon. So if you like Audra McDonald, you want to see a classic Broadway show, go see Gypsy. It's right now at the Majestic Theater, which was the theater that Phantom of the Opera was in for 30 plus years. So if you want to
Oh
also
wow.
sit in a theater that is filled with history, go see it. It's on 44th Street.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big Audra McDonald fan because of Ragtime,
Okay.
which I think I've talked about before. But I wish they would do a revival of that because it's already been over 20 years since almost 30 years since I think since it came out. Um,
Mhm.
but it would be an interesting one for them to revive because it's such an ethnic cast. Like a
Right.
third of the cast at least is strictly black. A third of the cast should be Jewish immigrants from Eastern Bloc countries, and then of course you have
Hmm.
the rich white folks. Um, but it's a great diverse cast. The music is amazing, and it's a really good one. So I think I feel like it's got to be due for a revival soon. It's been so
Hmm.
long, and it didn't stick around, and it hasn't toured or anything in a long time. So like it should be
It will get picked up
should be out there.
eventually. They all get put back into the circuit. Now, I will say for this show, traditionally, Rose is white, the kids are white. It's an all-white cast, but what they did with this version of Gypsy, I mean, Audra McDonald is black.
Hmm.
The girl who plays Louise and the she's black. The girl who plays June, she looks mixed, but she's definitely, you'd imagine, at least 50% black. I don't know exactly, but yeah, they made a lot of the only character that was still white was Herbie and some of the like dancers that were dancing alongside June. The men were all white. But other than that, it was, I'd say like 50-50 black cast with the main leads being black. So they took a different, approach to this, which I appreciated, and I thought Audra McDonald, she crushed it.
Yeah, she's insanely good. So
Hmm. Yeah, so go see it if you're in New York City or you want to make a trip out to New York City for the day. Like I said in the past, and I will continue saying this again, please play the the lottery and the rush. You can see really great shows for a fraction of the price. It is worth it. And just another reason to get out and see more shows over time.
yeah. All right, cool. Well, I will talk about something that I think I talked about before when its first season was on, but it's been a minute. I guess so. There's a show on Paramount Plus called School Spirits. It came out before the writer's strike. The second season was severely delayed by the writer's strike. I think I actually caught the entire first season almost by accident, well after. And so the second season just dropped a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. There's 8 episodes, and they do drop it weekly. Um, and so the gist of the show, it kind of reminds me of a mix between the show Ghosts on CBS and something like Pretty Little Liars. So it has a very teen feel to it because all the characters are teen. Um, they drop F-bombs in it, so it's above, what you would have for regular teenagers. Um, Funny enough, like there's not a lot of like sex or murder in it. So like other than the language, it's actually closer to a teen show. But I do feel like throwing the language in there feels more authentic. Like the people speak the way they would speak in real life in high school, you know. Um, but the gist of the story is this girl, played by Peyton List. The character's name is Maddie. She dies in the first episode, and what happens is, at least we don't know. I think we find out later on in the show that more locations are probably like this. But if you die from accidental causes or die from causes that aren't just natural, you kind of get stuck in the place that you died if it's a traumatic death. And so she wakes up and she walks into the gymnasium, and there's this group of people sitting around a chair, or sitting around in chairs, almost kind of like an AA meeting almost, and telling their stories. And what you come to find out really quick is they are all ghosts, kids that have passed away or students that have passed away at the school over 70, 80 years or whatever. And one of them is a teacher, the rest of them are students, and they're kind of just talking. And so what becomes interesting is that because she's a ghost, we know she's dead, but her body disappeared. We don't know where her body went. There also seems to be like this invisible kind of barrier around the school. So if you try and leave, you go past a certain point, you immediately get like zapped back to the place that you died in the school, and then you're kind of trapped there. So nobody can leave. And so the first season really is a big murder mystery about, how did this girl die? Because she doesn't remember how she died. What happened to her body? Who did it? They throw in a host of suspects and all this stuff, and there's, interesting stuff going on with the other ghosts. You've got one kid that was definitely a Disney kid. He was in the zombie musical movies, and then he was also just in the Thanksgiving horror flick that came out a couple years back. He's been around. The rest of the characters, I don't think I really recognize any of the actors. One of the teachers was on the show Travelers, which was an awesome show. But yeah, I mean, it really kind of centers around this really interesting mystery. And like I said, it does definitely feel a little teen. For when What's interesting too is that Maddie, when she died, she had a friend that she was really close to. What starts to happen in the first season is you find out that if he is in a location where anybody on the school has died, it's like there's some kind of energy there, and he can actually see and communicate with her. But only her. He can't see or communicate with any other ghosts, but it's because he has some kind of connection to her that he can. So they have this connection to the outside world that's, kind of helps them, try to solve this mystery. And so at the end of the first season, you definitely get this like big aha moment, surprise moment that sets up season two. And, I don't want to spoil too much because it is a interesting mystery show and there's a lot of cool ideas in it. And while it does feel a little teen for sure, one thing that I was really fascinated by, number one, is that I'm really into it, which I feel like I shouldn't be. Like I feel like it's not made for me, but I really am really into it. And then if you look at the ratings on IMDb, every season, or sorry, every episode in season two is an 8 or higher, except for one. So like they're rating out really well, and I don't know if that's because it's really being rated by the audience that it's targeted at, or if it's really that good. Like I can't decide. Like it definitely feels it's weird because it feels like it should be cornier than it is. It's not a comedy. Some of the characters are a little goofy and a little light because they were high school kids, right? One of them's a football player, like he's a jock, he's kind of a dummy. But he's a nice guy and all that. And so the second season, the finale is next week. And so I'm really curious to see where it goes. It hasn't been renewed for a third season yet. And part of the issue that they had with that was because of that writer strike. They weren't sure if it was going to have the popularity that the first season had, but as it turns out, in that break, as they were producing the second season, that break between season one and season two actually allowed for a much larger audience to find it. And it seems like the season two numbers have been pretty well up. So I'm hoping it gets a third season. There's a lot that they can do. I think one of the biggest reasons that I would hope for a third season too is that I don't know where they were at mentally when they were writing the second season. So I feel like they weren't really prepared to end it with this last episode that's coming up. So if it ends on any kind of cliffhanger, I really hope it gets a third season because it's worth it, and the acting is actually pretty solid. I think Peyton List is funny. She's one of the few actresses in Hollywood where there's another actress with the same name, because there's a different Peyton List who is much older, probably around 40 now. She's actually on The Rookie right now as a side character once in a while. But this Peyton List is definitely, she plays a teenager, but she's 20 something probably. She was in Cobra Kai, and some other stuff, but yeah, it's been a fun show. I definitely like, you have to be open to the teenageriness of it, right? Like it's definitely not Severance. It's not White Lotus. It's not something that's super adult and mature. Uh, but it is interesting. Like if you don't mind something that isn't overly adult, it's really fun. So I would say give it a shot if that's your jam. I wouldn't recommend this to Andrew. Like I don't think he would like it. Um, but for a lot of people that are a step down from that as far as their serious television watching goes, I would definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
It's too YA.
It For sure. It is definitely
which
has
I
a
don't
YA feel
mind.
to
I
it.
don't mind. I mean, Teen Wolf is like one of my favorite shows ever.
Yeah.
So
As
I
as
think
a
it
matter of
depends on the
fact,
show.
yeah, I would bet that it is tonally kind of similar to Teen Wolf, I would think.
Yeah,
Not quite as horror aspecty because,
sure.
the werewolves. They really don't lean into ghosts being scary in this. Like for the most part, the real world doesn't know these ghosts exist.
Mm,
Right. So they're not interacting and scaring people or anything like that. And it's not like when you die, you look like you did when you died. So they're not gross. Like they're just like kind of themselves, like they were when they were
hmm.
alive. They're just trapped there now. And some of the stuff's really fascinating because you've got characters, ghosts that have been there for 40, 50 years, and just can't move on for whatever reason. And that's kind of one of the things they start to dig into in the second season, like why it's so hard for these ghosts to move on, and why they're trapped there and things like that. So yeah, it's been really fun.
How's the following overall? I mean, granted, it got a second season, so it can't be that bad, but do you think
Um,
there'll be a third season?
I hope so. Like I said, that it seems like the numbers are up from the first season, and that gap between season one and season two because the writer's strike actually, I think it really released the first season released right when the writer's strike was going on.
Mm,
So it almost benefited from the writer's strike because nothing was coming out. So people
gotcha.
were looking for stuff to watch and they found this. And it
Sure.
seems like the second season is doing well. And like I said, if you look at it
Nice.
on IMDb, all of the episodes are rated really,
Pretty
I
high.
mean, eight is pretty high
Oh
especially
yeah.
for like a YA type show. And for every
Hmm.
episode but one to hit that eight mark, pretty well. A lot of them are 8.3, 8.4, 8.1. Like,
Right.
um,
That's great.
so yeah, like it's solid and it just has to be your kind of show. I think if you're looking, like I said, for something that's highly intelligent or very dramatic, then it's not for you. But if you can handle that kind of YA vibe, and then it's
Yeah.
cool. I would almost liken it to something like You, for anybody that watched You on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Um, like that kind of tone and that kind of storytelling, very similar in some regards. So
Cool.
if you like that stuff, this one would be good.
Nice.
So, all right, cool. Well, we can move on. I'm really curious because you just said you watched a movie that is up for Academy Awards at this point.
I did. I went on Tuesday for $9 movie nights at AMC
Nice.
and I saw I'm Still Here. And I think it's one of the films, in my opinion, that hasn't been talked about enough
Hmm.
that is up for Best Picture. And I knew it was a foreign language film. I didn't know what it was
Uh,
about at all. I went in completely blind. Do you have any idea what it
no, I've
covers,
never
Kevin?
even heard of it. Never
You
even
never
heard of it.
heard of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a Brazilian film
Okay.
and it's based on a true story about in the early 70s where in Brazil there was a dictatorship after different ideals. I mean, similar to like the Red Scare, I think, and even just in our own country during the Cold War era, when people were trying to find those that were spying or were going against the resistance. And at this point, there's a, a, a pretty big divide in ideals, and the country's being run by the military at this point.
Hmm.
And it follows the family called the Paivas, and Rubens Paiva is the husband, and the wife is Eunice. And Rubens Paiva was formerly a congressman who was part of this resistance that was, I believe, like decades prior, and now this revolutionary movement and political instability takes place where the the military will just single out people that were part of this resistance. And you see like this happy family, they're on the beach, they're taking photos, and then towards the beginning you notice things are starting to get a little odd because you see just the military going throughout the town and the mother's kind of played by Fernanda Torres is a bit worried, like what is happening? Just a bit also just unsure of what's going on. And they have 5 kids, I believe, 5 or 6 kids, mostly daughters and one son. And the family is at home having like a normal day. And the military comes in to the house and takes the husband out, and they tell him, you have to leave with us. We have to ask you a couple of questions. And they have like 3 or 4 other guys that stay behind with the wife, second oldest daughter, and then the other kids. And you're just wondering like what's going on. At this point, they eventually take the mother, Eunice, and that second oldest daughter in for questioning too. They put them in the car, and then they put like these hoods over their heads, and they don't show them where they're going. And then they take the hoods off, and they're like in some really shady warehouse situation. And then they ask them and torture them, asking them questions and such. And Eunice is like, where is my husband? And they're not giving her answers, and they're showing her pictures. Do you know any of these people? It's intense. They eventually let the daughter go. They let Eunice go after, I think, like a week plus, and no husband to be found. And at this point, you just are wondering, is he going to return? Had they killed this guy? What's going on? And the mother has to pretty much be the face of the family and not show any vulnerability when they're asking, is dad coming back? Yeah, he's away now, and she's completely just worried sick because she has no clue when her husband's going to come back or if he's ever coming back. So they're in Rio. They end up relocating to Sao Paulo, and they show you years later, and he's still not back. She ends up becoming a professor at a university there and doing her studies and trying to figure out like how to find her husband, get him back. And then finally, like I think it was like 15 to 20 years later, they present her with his death certificate, which is like a real bummer because you're hoping like 15, 20 years later he's released or something. And at that point, the dictatorship has been dismantled, and they show past that point to like the early 2000s when Eunice is pretty much in a wheelchair. She's at the end of her life, and I think she still has this like hope and just knowing that this hopefully, even though this really ruined her family and was a huge detriment to her kids too in many respects, as they lost a father early on in childhood for many of them. Overall, it was a very good story, very powerful showcasing of great acting. And Torres, excuse me, she won Best Actress in a Drama for the Golden Globes.
Okay.
So she is a strong contender for and is nominated for an Oscar. I don't think she's going to win, but we'll see. Who knows? At
Do you
this
know who she's
point,
up against?
Demi Moore, who I think she's favored to win on the
Yeah, for the
substance,
substance, yeah.
right? Because they have only one category for Best Actress, whereas in the Golden Globes there's two, and they break them into comedy, musical, or drama. So go see it. It's based again on a true story. She is so like for the most part just so calm and collected and brave. She has to put on such a strong face for her children in this film. The older version of her is played by her mother in real life, Fernanda, who's also named Fernanda.
Hmm.
So like the last 5 minutes or so, 5, 10 minutes or so, you see her in like her 80s or 90s, and it's her actual mother playing her, which is, I think,
That is
really
cool.
cool how they did that. But overall, very good movie. It wasn't, too hard to follow. I definitely Googled a lot after because I was more just curious of the story. And of course, at the end of the film, they show you what the real Eunice Paiva looked like, the picture where she's holding up the death certificate, which almost was like a sense of relief for her because it's over. Like, yes, he died and he was taken from us, but she doesn't have to worry or wonder anymore. Whatever happened to her husband, he ended up dying, and they found the death certificate. or it was presented to her.
Hmm.
And they even show and they recreated pictures from like earlier in the film, and you see like the real versions of those pictures. So it's definitely a a movie that had to be told, a story that I was not familiar with, and I hope more people get to watch in theaters when it comes to streaming because I think it's really important for, and also just something that resonates a lot with other countries currently going through something similar too. Unfortunately, it's a little too close to home.
Yeah.
But overall, very good movie. It was well deserved in terms of just ratings, both audience and critics above 90, both 97% exactly for the audience
Oh,
score and the
yeah,
critic
yeah.
score. Fantastic. And I would definitely give it 90s as well. I was engaged from start to finish.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, and so is foreign language all subtitles?
Yes,
Do you know if it's streaming anywhere or is it strictly in theaters still?
I think it's strictly in theaters. Let me double check though. How to pre-order. I'm still here before the Oscars. Let's go with no for now, Kevin.
All right.
But yeah, when it does come to streaming, I would give it a watch. I think it's, oh, I'm still here, Apple TV. Is it actually streamable though? Possibly.
My guess is you probably have to buy it or
Oh,
rent it.
100%. Yeah, watching it. Yeah. I mean, it's probably more expensive to buy it on Apple TV than going on a Tuesday to the theaters. So, yeah. Uh, wait till it drops. But overall, very good. I do recommend it.
Cool. All right. Um, I'll be honest, I don't really have anything else. White Lotus has been going on. I started that.
Yes.
Um, it is off to a very boring start.
Yep.
I was really hoping for more, so I've only watched two episodes. It feels like in the preview for the third episode, it might finally pick up. You can tell from the beginning of the first episode that it's going to end somewhere kind of exciting because there's gunfire and
Sure.
this kid looking for his mom, who I think is the son of the massage therapist.
She is.
Yeah,
He is. Sorry, he is. Yes.
and but otherwise, like in our group chat, they kind of talked about how even the accents are funky. Like
Yeah.
Parker Posey's always feels a little over top because Parker Posey's always a little over the top.
Hmm.
I love Parker Posey. Don't get me wrong. Like I actually I love Parker Posey. Um, but like Jason Isaac's accent is weird.
Horrible. It's
Yeah,
horrible.
comes in and out, and sometimes it's really southern, and sometimes it's really not. And like I always find myself wondering if you're going to cast this guy who's a fantastic British actor,
Why can't you just make the
just
family
make him
British?
British. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Or I mean, he could still be, from the United States, but also by way of the UK and just let him have his accent. Like
Right.
it is weird. It feels really forced and doesn't really work. Um, I think, for the most part, the acting itself isn't bad. Like I think Patrick Schwarzenegger's actually doing a pretty good job.
Of being a
Um,
creep.
yeah, he's definitely skeezy as hell. I don't know what's up with that family either. It's really weird. Like they talk about each other in really like kind of sexual ways, and I'm like, aren't they all three like brothers and sister?
Yeah, it's really creepy. I'm
Ye-
questioning like the character, and we were talking about this myself, you and Andrew, a couple days ago on chat. And yeah, I think the character dynamics this season are a little bit, well, first of all, not as exciting, but also a bit off, where I feel like I can't get like really engaged so far
Yeah.
unless things change. Like the only person I actually like is Belinda, the massage therapist who they brought
Hmm.
back. Everyone else, I'm like, I could do without, honestly, at this point.
I find myself more interested in the Thai couple.
Right.
you know,
Who worked there, not like as
yeah.
an actual guest this season. We're like, screw the guests. Well, they're lame.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm a big fan actor wise of of the other guy who's named
Walter Goggins.
Walton Goggins. Yeah, he's
Walton
amazing. Like
Goggins.
I always like him. He was great in he's great in everything. Um, but like I'm interested in what's going on with him, but I think it's only because I like him as an actor. And the girl that plays his girlfriend, I adore. She was on Sex Education, and she's hilarious in that because she's it's nice to see her play this part because she's a little smarter. On Sex Education, she is dumb. Like she's a dumb
Mm,
girl, but it's for a reason. Like and it fits
sure.
and that's a fantastic show. If you haven't watched Sex Education, you should definitely check that out over on Netflix.
Nice.
Um, really, really good. Um, but uh, but like I'm kind of rooting for her. I like I said, I at least want to know what's happening with Walton Goggins' character, and I think it's probably because I am a fan of his, not so much because I'm a fan of what's going on in the show for him right now.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm hoping, I'm hoping something else happens. That this third episode like really has to pick it up. Otherwise, I think it's going to lose a lot of people. Um, Quality
Yeah.
wise, it reminds me more of the first season than the second season.
Probably
The
because it's
second,
more like tropical island versus, Mediterranean beach. But other than that, I mean, I felt like in the first two seasons, I was like pretty engaged from the beginning, at least to some extent, or it was at least more so interested in the character dynamics. Or is this, I'm like, this is just disappointing. And most of the
see,
people that I know have seen it said the same thing. A few people were like, "Oh, it's really good." I was like, "Where is it really good?" Like nothing has actually happened yet. It's bizarre. And that toxic friendship group, that's like another thing too. I'm like, was this necessary to bring on? I don't know.
yeah, it's weird because they're good actresses.
Oh my God,
They're but
absolutely.
it's just like
Carrie Coon. Hell yeah.
yeah, it's like they're dragging on every dynamic to like build them up, but they're not. They haven't made any of them
No,
interesting. Like you can tell these girls are all jealous of each other's lives in
so
one way or
weird.
another. And they don't. Yeah, they're all kind of frenemies that have known each other for their whole lives, and it's weird. It has a very weird feel to it.
Right. I don't need to
Uh,
watch this on television. I see it in real life. Thanks.
yeah. Well, and that's how I felt about the first season. I think that's why it reminds me so much of the first season. I wasn't really into the first season. I didn't love
Really?
it. Yeah,
Okay.
the second season I liked a lot. The first season I was like, okay.
Could do without it.
Like I knew it was a good show. The acting was good. It was all put together really well. I just kind of wasn't into it.
Sure.
Second season, like I said, I really was, and this season just kind of feels like they just haven't
Stepped it
haven't put
up.
that together yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Might be a slow
Yeah.
burn, but who knows?
Yeah, hopefully they figure it out. I think there's always potential there
For
for sure.
sure. I mean, Andrew's gonna hate me for bringing this up. You know what also had a slow start? Squid Games. He got
It's
so
true.
upset. He got so upset when I said that. He's like, don't even compare the two. Just gets
Yeah,
so
yeah.
offended.
But in
But
a
it's
way to
true.
me,
It's
well,
true.
in a way to me too, they're comparable because not because of the show themselves. Like they're two very
Oh,
different
they're
shows.
different shows, but just in terms of
Um,
how they carried out the slow start,
yeah, and how like I actually didn't think the second season of Squid Game was as good as the first one.
it wasn't.
Like I really don't. And so like seeing this now we're going from the second to the third season, but I
Sure.
do feel like this is a fall off compared to
100%.
the season that came before. So yeah, we'll just have to see. Like I'm willing to at least watch the next episode, but if it
Yeah.
doesn't pick up, I don't know. Like there's a chance I might not finish it. Because if I just don't care, then I just don't care.
I fell
So
asleep during the first episode, like halfway through, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then I had to watch it a second time. Granted, I was like off a plane like a few hours before, but still, I was like, I should be way more excited about this. I wasn't.
yeah,
And I don't know. Well, but I think you're right. We'll see what happens next episode or two episodes. I'll see how long I stick it out.
yeah, I'm really curious since we were just talking about IMDb and school spirits. I wonder how
Oh,
these
what the
episodes are.
episodes?
Yeah, well, I wonder
Trash?
maybe I'm crazy, right? Like maybe I don't like it and everybody else does, you know?
No, everyone I've talked to for the most part is like not crazy about it, with the exception of two people. So yeah, I'm curious too. What?
7.7 and 7.6. So
Really? That's
for
higher than we thought.
that's higher than I thought it was. But to be fair, like it's apparently not as good as School Spirits.
Okay.
But like let me look at season two. I mean, to be fair, season two, the first two episodes, 7.6, 7.8.
Wait, for
And
School Spirit or for
no,
White Lotus?
for White Lotus season two. First two
Really?
episodes were pretty low also. Yeah.
How about the
And
ending? Like the
and then
end?
it's all eights after that, all eights and higher.
Weird.
With the finale being an 8.8. So
Because they're good.
benefit of the doubt, maybe season one, first two
I just
episodes,
didn't
seven
feel
point
this
three, seven point
bored.
five.
I didn't feel this bored with the first two seasons.
The other thing is too, is that now you're going in with expectations. I
True.
think even with the second season, I don't know if the expectations were quite as high. This season, you're definitely going with expecting something really, really good. And if it
Hmm.
doesn't just launch, then
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Like looking at that, it gives me a little bit of hope that it's really kind of starting off, at least from the ratings, the same as the
Sure.
first two seasons, basically, um, with almost as
Yeah.
many votes too. Episode one of season two had almost 6,000 votes. This one already has 4,500 votes. So
Hard
it's
to say.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I do hope it picks up. I like a lot of this cast. So,
It's a good
um,
cast. I mean, a lot of them I still don't really know. Like I know Jason Isaacs. I knew. I don't know if I've seen Patrick Schwarzenegger in anything, but Carrie Coons and Gilded Age and
mhm.
a few other things that I've seen. Overall, yeah, it will be interesting, and I like how they bring back Belinda because I feel like she deserves some sort of award for just putting up with Jennifer Coolidge's character.
Mhm. Yeah, but it sounds like it seems like from the pilot episode, things are going to be at least a little scary for her. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we don't
And
know.
she's got weird energy with the other
Hmm.
dude. So who
Yeah,
I feel like isn't into her, but she's into him. So we'll see what happens there.
yeah,
Um,
it's
but yeah,
bizarre.
yeah, we'll see what happens. So. All right. And then, so we'll let you close out the show then with the final Bridget
Tying a
Jones
knot and
film.
putting a bow on it for my girl, Bridget Jones. I love Bridget Jones movies. This is the fourth and final film. God help me if they make another one. So, the third film, for those of you who had not seen it, that came out in like 2016, 2017, and that one was hysterical because it was called Bridget Jones's Baby, and Bridget's in her early 40s. She's crushing it as a TV producer in London, but she still doesn't have love. And of course, uh, she goes to a music festival, gets laid, and then sees Mark Darcy like a week later. And then they hook up after she finds out that he's no longer, or he's separated from his wife. And she finds out she's pregnant, and you have to figure out who the father is. That was hysterical and heartwarming and sweet. And you find out, spoiler, that Mark Darcy is the father, and she ends up marrying Mark Darcy. Beautiful ending. And then they come out with the fourth movie. Bridget Jones mad about the boy. What boy? She's with the love of her life, Mark Darcy. So, complete transparency, I don't think this film needed to be made. Do I love her? Yes. Did it need to be made? No. But surprisingly, after seeing this, I was shocked. The ratings were high. And I don't know if it's because just people love Bridget Jones, but both the critics score and the audience score, the critics gave it an 88 and the audience gave it a 75. I personally would have given it lower than both. And the reason being is that, first of all, it's so sad. You're taking such a beautiful story. They kill off Mark Darcy, which is like such a shitty thing to do. And you meet Bridget Jones in her like mid to late 40s raising their son William, who you meet at the end of the first film. That's the baby that's born. And then they have a little girl, Mabel, very cute. And she is just struggling being a single mom, alone, completely just broken. After you built this woman up for three freaking films, you break her down again. What the hell? fine, do it again. And then you have all her fun friends and such. And then at this point, Mark's been gone for like 3, 4 years, and they try to influence her to get back out there and to get laid and to meet men and find love again. And oh, by the way, Daniel Cleaver is alive, who is Hugh Grant's character, who's they had a funeral for in the third film because he apparently got into a plane crash and died, but they find his body at the end of the third film. They show like a newspaper story saying he's actually alive. But you see him older version, and they have like a lot of funny jokes that are referenced like from the first couple movies where he's just like very naughty and says stuff about like her big pants. She's like this massive pair of underwear, and she's like, "It's my sexy underwear." It's like, no, it's not. It's like it's huge. It's like
I can
goes
remember
up.
that. Yeah.
It's like midway up her torso. Um, so that's really funny. And then and then it gets like unbelievable because then her kids get caught up in a tree, and then this like really hot guy who's played by Leo Woodall, who's in season 2 of White Lotus, he's like a creepy dude. He's like, you know what he looks like. You can Google him.
I have to look them up.
He plays this, I guess, woodsman tree, like one of the guys that works recreationally at the park and takes down trees and such. And they match on Tinder after a brief encounter, and he's
Hmm.
head over heels for her, and he's 29, she's like 47, 48, just completely unbelievable. And of course, he ghosts her after they hook up a couple times and start dating for like a few months. And then she starts falling for the teacher, who is played by, I'm so sorry, I wish Andrew was here. I can't pronounce his name. You've seen him before too. Um,
Who's the character?
Ch Chiwetel?
Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yeah, thank you. Him. Um, he plays the teacher, and spoiler, she and like they give it a try at the end, and he's more age appropriate for her. And at first he's
Yeah.
kind of like really out there and eccentric, but she spends more time with him after because that's her son's teacher, science teacher, and they go on a trip and they spend more time and they realize they have a lot in common, and they share a kiss at the end, and it's kind of ends to leave you to believe they give it a try and
Hmm.
such. But it's, you feel the heartache and sadness of Mark Darcy being gone. You have a lot of laughs based on just very similar type of humor, which is good, but I think it was like an unnecessary make. And they didn't even put it in theaters. You have to watch it. It came to streaming on Peacock, which is a whole other thing, which I'm like, why'd you bother doing that for such a great series? So that was kind of a bummer. I'm glad it got good reviews. I just didn't think it was that great. I was kind of underwhelmed, and even though I appreciated what they tried to do, I just didn't like that they killed off Mark. Why build this woman up for 3 films and then just kill the love of her life? It's just fucked up.
Yeah. Just to make it interesting, you need drama, right?
Yeah, but it's like everything that this woman fought for 3 films, and then you're like, oh, her husband's dead, and she's got nothing left, and she's got 2 kids. Like, I don't even think it was that great. And it's like, do you want to see how more heartbreak you can feel? Why don't you fall in love with a 29-year-old? It's just so unrealistic. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Such a
Yeah,
shame.
it seems like a series that they really held on to probably at least one film too long, maybe two. Like,
No, Bridget Jones' Baby was so cute. I loved
was
it.
it?
Oh, hysterical. It was sweet. I mean, they finally get married. Everyone want Mark Darcy is like the ultimate husband. He is the ultimate, like it is the ultimate love story. It's hysterical and wonderful in so many ways. It's one of my favorite movies. The first 3, like in the overall like series itself, and it's based on a book, and she crushes it. Renee Zellweger playing Bridget Jones. It's just this movie was just in my opinion, was such a disappointment. It was so unnecessary to be made. But
All
I
right.
know other people might feel differently. So clearly the critics did 88%. But I still love her, and I encourage everybody to watch Bridget Jones, whether you're in a good mood, bad mood, you want to watch with your boyfriend, or just watch it girls' night. It's hysterical and heartfelt in all the ways, especially if you're a single woman living in a city, you can totally resonate with Bridget Jones.
I do think too, like Renee Zellweger is one of those actresses who I've never been a huge fan of necessarily. Like I don't find that she's a great actress, but I always thought that this role was perfect for her. Like I remember
Totally.
seeing the first one, and she was so like charming and funny and kind of doofy, and like she was just a little bit of everything, and it worked
Right.
for her. And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't, like I said, I'm not her biggest fan. Like even in other than Bridget Jones, Empire Records is probably my favorite performance of hers. Um, she was fine in the Tom Cruise one, Jerry Maguire. Like she was fine. She's been around, but um, I
Yeah.
thought, Bridget Jones always felt like it was made for her, and I always thought she did a really good job
Oh yeah.
as
It
that character.
is
So
100%. It's one of my favorite movies. It's like I don't even think it's a real girls movie. It's just a good kick your feet back up and just watch. And this is coming from someone who's not like I'm not a big rom-com person, but I love Bridget Jones so much. It's
yeah.
so funny, and I don't know if it's just because I can resonate with it so much being a single woman in my 30s and in the city, but I think it's fantastic.
All right. Cool. Well, then we've got, I think, came out of this with a few things to watch, a few things to not watch, and
Yes, few things to not watch,
and
and few
everything in
things
between.
to decide whether we want to continue watching.
Yes. Yes. So cool. All right. Well, then next week, I don't know what's coming out. I do know that Nosferatu has been on HBO, I think, for a week or
Hmm.
two, and I keep meaning to watch that. So I'm hoping to watch that before next week. Um, I'm sure the way Severance has been going, Andrew and I may talk about that again next week. If you can get caught up by next weekend, uh,
Wow.
it's so good. It's so good. It's. I remember saying it when it came out. It was my favorite show of the year. The first year it came out. Like I thought it was just brilliant.
Yeah,
And this season is probably better than
really.
the first season. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
So
I haven't heard one bad thing about it, so I know it's got to be something special.
yeah, it really, really is. And if you can go in with as few spoilers as possible, there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens in it. So
Amazing.
um, yeah. So give that a shot. But otherwise, to everyone at home, I will thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.